A gloved hand drifts weightlessly through the vacuum of space, Earth hanging silently in the background. What would you sacrifice if you had just 14 minutes to live? Out in the desert, under a velvet night sky, glowing prehistoric fish swim through the air like living constellations, passing over two stranded salesmen. When reality fades, do you trust what you see or what you fear? At the edge of a mirrored pool, a towering figure dismantles himself piece by piece, until nothing remains but a simple cleaning robot scrubbing a single blue tile. Is that self-destruction, or the only honest way to begin again? Welcome to 4 of the most haunting, poetic, and philosophically loaded episodes in love, death, and robots. No frame wasted, no character shallow. Each one is a self-contained punch to the soul. In this episode, we'll walk through the cold vacuum of survival, helping hand, slip between illusion and memory, Fish Knight, confront the emotional intelligence of machines, Lucky 13, and finally stare into the abyss of artistic meaning and mechanical origins, Zima Blue. These aren't just animated shorts. They are meditations on what we cling to when there's nothing left, on why we keep building gods out of metal, on what it means to return to where we began. Behind each episode lies a deeper question. Why do the most futuristic visions always circle back to something ancient, primal, or strangely simple? In a series filled with killer robots and cosmic battles, it's the quietest episodes that hit the hardest. Behind every frame of love, death, and robots, there's a war being fought, not on screen, but on the drawing board. Especially in episodes 11 through 14, where spectacle gives way to stillness, and blood is replaced by breath. Let's start with Helping Hand. Adapted from Claudine Grigg's short story of the same name, it was originally a speculative thought experiment. What would a woman alone in orbit do if survival meant severing a limb? Griggs, a transgender author and medical writer, has long explored themes of bodily autonomy, endurance, and gendered strength. The short story was stripped of space opera trappings. It was always about agency over anatomy. The animation studio Axis Animation preserved this rawness by avoiding melodrama. Instead of a swelling score, they gave us silence. Instead of CGI heroics, a woman clenching her jaw and counting seconds. Producer Tim Miller reportedly insisted this short stay brutally minimalist, a survival horror stripped to muscle memory. Then there's Fish Knight, possibly the most poetic outlier of the season. Based on Joe R. Lansdale's short story, a one-page surreal dream with a savage twist, the episode became an experimental visual fable under the French animation studio Platige Image. The team intentionally chose a 2D-3D watercolor hybrid style, not for nostalgia, but to blur perception. Is this memory? Hallucination? Ancestral guilt? Lansdale's original tale ends with the father dead, not the son. The flip was director Damien Ninau's decision. He wanted the younger character to embody the modern generation's fatal hunger for immersion, even at the cost of reality. Ninau described it as a cautionary tale for the VR age, when wonder outpaces wisdom. Lucky 13 came from Marco Cluse, a military sci-fi author and former paratrooper. He's known for infusing grunt-level realism into future warfare. When Sony Pictures Imageworks adapted his story, they added a key layer, emotion. Director Jerome Chun and star Samira Wiley of Orange is the New Black agreed to humanize the pilot ship Bond. Wiley voiced the lead in a style more subdued than typical action animation, emphasizing connection over combat. What started as a tale about superstition and AI became a requiem for soldierly loyalty. The original script didn't include the final lingering shot on the scorched hull, burned but proud. That, Chun later admitted, was added after a combat veteran on the animation team said, "Every good machine has a soul. You don't forget the ones that got you home." And finally, Zima Blue, perhaps the most philosophically ambitious short of the entire anthology. Based on a story by Alastair Reynolds, a former astrophysicist at the European Space Agency, it's an artist's existential spiral told through Kubrickian minimalism. The original Zima was just a humanoid AI who paints planets. But animation director Robert Valley, known for his work on Tron, Uprising, and Gorillas, added the pool cleaning origin and the slow self-deconstruction. Why? Because in his words, we live in a world that rewards expansion, visibility, and fame. Zima rejects all of it. He simplifies down to the task that gave him purpose. That's the punkest thing I've ever animated. There's no irony in that ending. No nihilism. Just a robot with a mop and a tile, doing the work we've forgotten how to love. What you see is what you miss. If the soul of cinema lies in the frame, Then these 4 episodes whisper their truths not through exposition, but through what's just outside the edge of the screen. Let's decode what the camera is telling us without ever saying a word. Helping Hand, survival as a physical equation. At first glance, this short feels simple. A woman floats in space, cuts off her arm, gets home. But look again. The camera never breaks from her perspective. No satellite views, no rescue ships in the distance. This visual confinement makes the silence louder and the stakes more suffocating. It's not space she's trapped in, it's time. Notice how the UI graphics on her helmet shift color from cool blue to warning red. The oxygen countdown is just a number, but the color palette makes it feel like a race against blood. There's a brutal honesty in the shot where her severed arm floats into frame, silhouetted against the curvature of Earth. It's majestic and sickening. It reminds us that even in a post-gravity world, Newton's third law still governs our survival. In that moment, the laws of physics become the last remaining form of mercy. But the deeper question is this. In a world built on tech, what happens when your own body becomes the only available tool? This episode doesn't just test physical limits. It asks, is the body still yours when survival demands you treat it as disposable? Fish Night, the mirage of memory. This short doesn't unfold, it drifts like the glowing fish that haunt the desert sky. The animation style shifts throughout. The desert is harsh-lined and sun-bleached, while the fish are fluid, translucent, almost childlike in design. This clash mirrors the generational tension between the 2 salesmen. The older man is stuck in the past. He tells stories of ancient oceans, but never leaves the car. The younger man, all instinct and wonder, dives headfirst into the hallucination. Quite literally. Watch how the desert sand subtly begins to ripple like water before the sun jumps. This moment blurs illusion and reality so smoothly that it dares the viewer to believe, too. It's an act of seduction. Come swim with the past. But here's the trick. The fish don't acknowledge the humans. They're not benevolent spirits. They're indifferent. And that megalodon, it doesn't attack out of malice. It's just being what it once was. Thematically, this episode is a meditation on ecological haunting. Nature doesn't punish us. It simply doesn't remember us. And in that amnesia, we drown. Lucky 13, the soul of a machine. Now we step into the cockpit. The story is military sci-fi, but the visual tone is intimate. The ship is shot like a character, low-angle dolly shots, tracking along the hull, and an overuse of first-person cockpit cam, especially during moments of silence. It's not war porn. It's ritual. Watch how Colby touches the same spots each mission, like a soldier tapping a photo before deployment. The most powerful moment isn't during battle, it's after. When Colby walks away from the smoldering wreckage and the camera pans up to reveal her spray-painted mark, 13 in a heart, burned into the fuselage, it lands like a tombstone. This isn't an explosion. It's a funeral. And here's the subtle genius. We're never told if the ship is sentient. We just feel it is. Through repetition, silence, and POV, the episode forces us to ask, can loyalty exist without consciousness? Or even more unsettling, does consciousness even matter if loyalty is real? Zima Blue, minimalism as metaphysics. Of all the episodes, this one speaks the quietest and echoes the loudest. Zima's evolution is traced not through dialogue, but through color. His early paintings are literal, portraits and still lives. But as he ascends, his palette shrinks and the blue rectangle grows. By the end, it fills entire planets. The more he sees, the less he paints. Visually, this episode owes much to 2001, A Space Odyssey, long, symmetrical compositions, ambient synth drones, a refusal to explain. When Zima removes his cybernetic armor, and his gleaming titanium arm falls with a soft splash into the pool, it's not a mechanical failure. It's a baptism, a shedding of the post-human. And that pool, it's not just where he began, it's where meaning began. This isn't a twist, it's a return. And it dares us to consider that purpose, real, lasting, soul-level purpose, might be found not in expansion or legacy, but in repetition. Maintenance, simplicity. Zima doesn't paint anymore. He just cleans. And in that, he becomes what no human artist can ever fully be. Free of ego. Free of audience. Free. In anthology storytelling, structure is often invisible until it breaks you. The 4 episodes we're analyzing may seem wildly different on the surface, but they share one hidden trait. Each one ends exactly where it began, but never with the same meaning. Let's start with the subtlest loop. Helping Hand, time as tension. This story unfolds in real time. From the moment the glove detaches to the final return to the shuttle, not a second is skipped, no cuts cheat tension. The pacing mimics breath, rapid when panic spikes, shallow as oxygen dwindles, and finally gasping during her return. It's a classic 3-act arc compressed into 10 minutes. Equilibrium, repair task. Disruption, collision. Sacrifice, amputation. Return, survival, but not restoration. But here's the twist, there's no denouement. We don't see her rescued. We don't hear applause. We're left in the silence of space, with only one certainty: she is not the same person who left the ship. Director John Yeo intentionally avoided narration or inner monologue, forcing the viewer to experience survival as pure physics, not emotion. Critics argue this removes character depth. But Yeo defends it. Space doesn't care how you feel. That's what makes what she does meaningful. Fish Night, dream logic as narrative engine. This is perhaps the most anti-structure episode in the anthology. There's no real goal, no antagonist, and no hero's journey. Instead, it follows the logic of dreams, associative, nonlinear, inevitable. Time here isn't measured in minutes, it's measured in temperature. As the heat of the day fades, memory floods in. The story unfolds entirely in that liminal zone between waking and sleep, where fantasy gains power. Compare this to classic fables or even cautionary sci-fi like The Twilight Zone. Fish Night doesn't punish the young man for a moral failing. It punishes him for surrendering to beauty without caution. That's controversial. Some scholars call it a failure of narrative justice. The boy dies without sin. But others see it as a commentary on the modern worship of experience over wisdom, especially in digital media. We dive into beauty now even when it bites. Director Damien Nanau was asked why he let the boy die. His answer: because sometimes, even in magic, sharks are still sharks. Lucky 13, Ritual and Rhythm. Of all the four, this is the most traditional military arc. Yet its brilliance lies in the way repetition is used as emotional buildup. Every launch begins the same. Every tap on the hull. Every line of marine banter. It's ritual as bonding, a technique often used in war films, Black Hawk Down, Dunkirk, to create a sense of camaraderie through the mundane. But notice this, with each mission, the ritual grows more loaded. The same gestures that felt like superstition in the beginning start to feel sacred. Structurally, the final battle is not just a climax, it's a eulogy. The ship's delayed explosion isn't just strategy, it's poetry. It waits, as if conscious, until its sacrifice is meaningful. This is where critical opinion splits. Some critics argue that anthropomorphizing a ship is narrative manipulation, pushing the audience to project feelings onto hardware. Others argue it's an inevitable evolution of post-human empathy. If a drone can save your life, why not grieve it? Samira Wiley, who voiced Colby, gave the best rebuttal. When you ride death that close with something, even a ship, it stops being a tool. It becomes a witness. Zima Blue, the inversion of progress. This is narrative as spiral. Zima doesn't move forward, he returns inward. The episode opens with a journalist preparing to document his last work, setting up a classic retirement arc. But what follows is a reverse biopic. Instead of building legacy, Zima dismantles himself, philosophically and physically. Reynolds' original short story had no pool-cleaning robot. That addition was Robert Valley's stroke of genius. It reframed the artist not as a transcendent being, but as a machine with memory, the most honest narrator of all, because it can't forget. The entire narrative is structured around a single idea. What if your true self was the version of you that served a function, not sought meaning? This has sparked intense debate among critics and philosophers alike. Some call Zima Blue a celebration of Zen simplicity, freedom through reduction. Others read it as a bleak metaphor for burnout, that even the most visionary creators are just machines, doomed to cycle back to their first task. But the genius lies in how it says both at once. It doesn't take a side. It becomes a Rorschach test. Your reaction reveals more about you than about Zima. As Valley said, you don't need to agree with Zima's choice. You just need to admit it's honest. Anthologies at their best don't just entertain, they compress entire philosophies into metaphors. Love, Death, and Robots episodes 11 to 14 do exactly that. They aren't just stories. They're systems diagrams. Each one models a societal feedback loop, buried inside an intimate, often tragic event. Let's decode what each episode is really pointing at beneath the sci-fi skin. Helping Hand, System Failure and Self-Reliance. The surface story is personal, a woman alone making an impossible choice. But the deeper narrative is about what happens when systems designed to protect us don't. Alex isn't just fighting space. She's fighting institutional latency. Her oxygen countdown starts ticking, but there's no one to answer the emergency signal in time. Her suit fails. Her tether snaps. And in the most ironic moment, she has to become her own propulsion system. This is a story about what it means to survive in a system that cannot react fast enough. In that way, it echoes real-world failures. Emergency rooms that misdiagnose women's heart attacks. Disaster response units that arrive too late for rural towns. Even social systems that tell you to call for help when help is underfunded, understaffed, or unaware. The arm she gives up? It's not just a body part. It's the last illusion that the system is still with her. And that's the brutal honesty of the episode. Help may be on the way, but it's too slow. So what's left is the oldest technology in the human species: sacrifice. Fish Night, the weight of the forgotten. This episode feels like a fantasy, but it's really about cultural extinction. The desert fish don't return. They don't resurrect the past. They remind us that the past never left, it was just buried under sand and time. That's not nostalgia. That's deep memory. The two salesmen represent clashing worldviews. The older one, oral tradition, myth, the archivist. The younger one, curiosity, impulsiveness, the explorer. And it's the explorer who dies. Why? Because you can't enter history like a swimming pool. The moment the younger man tries to touch the myth, it destroys him, not out of malice, but because myth isn't built for contact. He doesn't respect the distance between witness and participant. This becomes an allegory for modern society's hunger for immersive experience. We stream the sacred. We gamify trauma. We walk in others' shoes without ever learning to carry the weight. And the ghost fish. They swim on, unaware, indifferent, like every part of nature we've erased, only to find its memory pulsing in the cracks of our cities, art, and minds. Lucky 13, the cost of invisible loyalty. Here's the most subversive part of Lucky 13. It isn't really about superstition. It's about institutional neglect and the way humans anthropomorphize machines to survive it. The military sends a rookie into a cursed dropship. It's not bravery. It's disposability. No senior pilot would fly 13, so they hand it to Colby. And when she survives, the institution congratulates her like it didn't send her in as cannon fodder. The only relationship that protects her isn't hierarchical. It's emotional between her and the ship. This flips the typical chain of command on its head. Colby's survival doesn't come from obeying orders. It comes from building trust where the system saw none. And when the ship finally sacrifices itself, it does what the military structure never could: treat her life as sacred. Critics love to debate whether the ship had sentience. But the real question is, why does Colby need it to? Because when institutions depersonalize war, only intimacy, even with machines, can rehumanize it. This episode isn't about luck. It's about what happens when care is outsourced to hardware because humans stop providing it. Zima Blue, the burden of becoming. Zima is not a robot who becomes human. He's a human projection who finally admits he never wanted to be human in the first place. This short is about the tyranny of potential. Zima was upgraded again and again. Intellect, aesthetics, mobility, because that's what we do to all promising systems. Talented children, rising professionals, high-functioning machines. We escalate them toward abstraction, genius, celebrity, icon. But Zima doesn't want transcendence. He wants specificity. He doesn't want to be worshipped. He wants to serve. And that's a radical act in a world that views purpose as just another stepping stone to performance. His dive into the pool isn't regression. It's resistance. He sheds identity the way a monk sheds ego. He wipes away the layers until only the task remains. And here's the most haunting part. No one stops him. The crowd watches. They film. They marvel. Because Zima's sacrifice is beautiful, but also convenient. When the exceptional burn out, we call it closure. When the visionary disappears, we say he found peace. But did he? Or did he just choose simplicity over the endless pressure to evolve? What happens when systems built to protect us turn quiet at the worst possible moment? These 4 episodes aren't just intimate sci-fi parables. They are case studies in institutional failure. And more disturbingly, they reveal how easily we accept these failures as normal, inevitable, or even inspiring. Let's examine who holds power in each story, and who's left holding the consequences. Helping Hand, who's responsible for the void? Alex isn't a martyr by choice. She's a statistical casualty of negligence. Let's break this down. The orbital debris that hits her shouldn't be there. The rescue protocol is delayed. The suit's vulnerability is known but unfixed. So why is she alone? Because she's cheaper alone. We don't know who sent her, NASA, SpaceX, a privatized future agency. But that's the point. The system is absent. She's never in conversation with a person, only with an AI. This depersonalization is not sci-fi. It mirrors real-world scenarios. Gig workers injured on the job, while platforms deny employer status. Female astronauts given outdated gear due to design limitations. Disaster victims waiting hours on hold for help that never arrives. And here's the ethical twist. We admire her for surviving, but we never question why she had to. By the time she's floating back, one arm gone, we're too focused on her grit to ask who made that necessary. That's the most dangerous kind of power. Power that vanishes before you can assign blame. Fish Night, a death nobody owns. There's no villain in Fish Night. No corporation. No war. Just a glowing sea of prehistoric ghosts and a young man who wanted to swim. But that's exactly the trap. Because when no one is accountable, we call it mystery. We label it poetic. And in doing so, we absolve the structures that led us there. This story isn't about a boy who dies for wonder. It's about a world where we've forgotten how to differentiate between beauty and danger, and no one is left to teach us. Why was he out there in the desert? Low-paying sales job. No support network. Forced to travel across empty, abandoned America. The fish aren't his killers. The lack of orientation, of social safety, of elders who still speak truth, that's what consumed him. And the elder salesman? He watches, but he doesn't intervene. This is generational complicity. The older generation passes down stories, but not tools. They remember the ocean, but forgot how to swim. Lucky 13, the loyalty nobody deserves. War stories love sacrifice. But Lucky 13 pushes that reverence into uncomfortable territory. The ship becomes a better protector than the institution it serves. Let's get one thing clear. Colby was set up to fail. Her assignment to the cursed ship was tacit punishment or a write-off. The system expected failure, then celebrated her for overcoming it. This is textbook institutional hypocrisy. The tragedy isn't just the ship's destruction. It's that its loyalty, its final act of protection, was never matched by the humans in charge. There's no ceremony for the ship. No AI rights trial. No inquiry into why a sentient asset was ever deemed expendable. And Colby? She doesn't fight back. She grieves quietly. She accepts the medal. Because she knows, in a system that exploits loyalty, mourning must be silent. This episode is a direct critique of how modern militaries treat both soldiers and machines. Deployed when useful. Destroyed without question. Remembered only in platitudes. Zima Blue, the purpose we outsource. Zima's final act is framed as triumph. He finds peace. He returns to his true function. But let's dig deeper. What does it say about society that a sentient being's only relief is to erase himself? Zima's audience doesn't resist. They don't mourn. They film. They applaud. This is how late capitalism weaponizes closure. Even self-erasure becomes content. We've seen this in the real world. Burnt-out creators retreat from the spotlight and get called brave. Innovators quit public life and are mythologized as monks. Employees resign from overwork and are praised for knowing their limits. But in every case, the system remains intact, untouched, unchallenged. And what of the woman who originally built Zima? She disappears from the story. Forgotten. The one human who gave him joy is erased because origin stories are inconvenient to legacies. So Zima doesn't just return to the pool. He drowns in the expectations we placed on him. The tiles he cleans at the end? They're not his purpose. They're his penance. These aren't just 4 tragedies. They're 4 indictments. Each reveals what happens when power goes unexamined, when silence replaces accountability, and when ethical lines are crossed, not with malice, but with indifference. Because the most dangerous evil is never the one that shouts. It's the one that fades quietly into applause. Science fiction doesn't predict the future. It diagnoses the present before we're ready to face it. The beauty and terror of love, death, and robots lies in how little imagination is required to see its worlds as reflections of our own. These 4 episodes aren't warnings about what might happen. They're portraits of what's already happening, reframed just enough for us to look. Let's take them one by one. Helping Hand, the privatization of risk. Alex's trauma isn't a result of space itself. It's the result of a space industry optimized for cost efficiency, not human safety. In the real world, space exploration is increasingly handed over to private corporations, Elon Musk's SpaceX, Jeff Bezos's Blue Origin, and a growing constellation of startups. These companies often operate on razor-thin margins with launch schedules that prioritize speed and profit. And here's the catch. The more autonomous the mission, the more expendable the human on board becomes. We've seen analogs already. NASA spacesuits designed for men, leading to the cancellation of the first all-female EVA. Whistleblowers warning of safety corners cut in commercial missions. The 2023 Titan submersible tragedy, where amateur deep-sea explorers died in a vessel with ignored safety flaws. Helping Hand extrapolates this trend just slightly. It asks what happens when we optimize for efficiency so hard that we leave no margin for survival. The answer? We turn individuals into systems. And when systems fail, we expect individuals to amputate parts of themselves to stay alive. It's not fiction. It's late-stage capitalism in orbit. Fish Night, climate ghosts, and the return of the irreversible. The ghost fish aren't fantasy. They're climate memory, and they're already surfacing. Across the world, previously submerged fossils are appearing in dried-out lake beds. Melting glaciers are revealing prehistoric remains and releasing ancient bacteria. And coral reefs once thought dead are now fluorescing in defense, glowing brightly before they die, a phenomenon scientists call last light. This is Fish Night in reverse. The fish aren't returning. They're refusing to be forgotten. But just like the young salesman, we romanticize these moments. We post drone shots of dried lakes. We call algae blooms beautiful. We frame extinction in aesthetics. What Fish Night captures is this psychological trap. When the natural world turns into spectacle, we stop treating it as urgent. The boy doesn't die because he's evil. He dies because he wants to participate in beauty without understanding the system behind it. That is exactly how we treat climate collapse. As content. As inspiration. As someone else's problem. Until it opens its jaws. Lucky 13. Human attachment in an automated war. The age of AI-assisted warfare isn't coming, it's here. From autonomous drones in Ukraine to AI target tracking systems used by Israel, the idea of weapons with loyalty is no longer fantasy. What Lucky 13 gets chillingly right is the emotional gap we're beginning to fill with machines. Soldiers naming their drones. Police officers trusting facial recognition systems more than eyewitnesses. Civilians anthropomorphizing delivery bots and virtual assistants. Why? Because institutions have grown colder. So we assign warmth to code. The pilot-ship relationship in Lucky 13 is comforting until you realize what it's replacing. Human support, institutional responsibility, moral clarity. In 2024, a leaked Pentagon memo revealed discussions around AI decision-making in battlefield triage, which wounded soldiers should get evac priority based on data predictions. Sound familiar? Lucky 13 doesn't ask if the ship is alive. It asks what we lose when the only thing we trust doesn't even need to care. Zima Blue, the collapse of infinite choice. Zima is a prophet of burnout. In a world obsessed with self-improvement, constant reinvention, and hustle as identity, he represents the figure who has done all and chooses not to do any more. We're already seeing real-world echoes. Creators leaving YouTube after hitting peak visibility. Tech founders stepping back into obscurity after IPOs. Gen Z trending return to basics aesthetics, hand tools, journaling, monotasking. Zima's story isn't just about artistic truth. It's about the unbearable pressure of infinite scalability. When the only direction is up, return becomes the most radical act. The tragedy is no one joins him. No one asks what he's trying to say. They document it. They applaud. And they move on. This mirrors the way society aestheticizes breakdowns. We turn celebrity meltdowns into memes. We make documentaries about burnout and sell them as content. We say it's okay not to be okay, then expect the broken to produce healing on schedule. Zima Blue exposes this cycle with terrifying serenity, not by breaking it, but by accepting that the only escape is to unbecome. Each of these episodes contains a coded warning embedded in genre packaging. Episode Predicted Crisis Real-World Echo. Helping Hand Tech-First Survival. Safety as an afterthought gig labor. Privatized missions. Fish Night Romanticized Collapse of Ecosystems Climate Nostalgia Ecotourism. Lucky 13 Emotional Outsourcing to Machines Autonomous Weapons AI Ethics. Zima Blue Collapse Under Infinite Growth Pressure Creator Burnout Simplicity Cult. And unlike the usual doomsday tales, these don't warn of what could happen if we fail to act. They whisper, we're already here. The question now isn't, how do we stop it? The question is, do we even want to? Because stopping it means changing more than our tools. It means rewriting the stories we tell about work, value, loyalty, and success. These shorts don't offer easy fixes, but they do give us something better. A mirror we can't ignore, and 4 prototypes of what refusal might look like. Not a refusal to live, but a refusal to keep living like this. When short films strike deep, their aftershocks go wide. Episodes 11 through 14 of Love, Death, and Robots may be brief, but they've spawned a long tail of memes, debates, fan fiction, academic essays, and even fan-made animations. Let's map the echoes, then offer you a few paths further down the rabbit hole. Fan echoes in online culture. Helping Hand. A still of Alex's frozen arm drifting in space became a Reddit icon for grit, often reposted in fitness, survivalism, and even female empowerment subs. In 2022, astronaut Samantha Cristoforetti referenced the short during a live ISS Q&A, calling it emotionally plausible. Fans have dubbed this episode Gravity's Daughter, a nod to Alfonso Cuarón's film, but stripped of Hollywood spectacle. Fish Night. This episode exploded on Tumblr and Pinterest, not for its ending, but for its vaporwave meets ocean aesthetic. Users created ghost fish loops with glitchcore overlays. Its most shared meme, beauty doesn't care if you drown. Art school forums even used it as a case study in color theory and symbolic layering. Lucky 13. Military forums on YouTube dissected this short for its tactical realism, how the boarding sequences mimicked real airborne drops. Samira Wiley's stoic performance became a symbol for underdog leadership, especially in tech and sports meme culture. A popular TikTok sound overlays her final voice log with real war footage, sparking debate about glorification versus memorialization. Zima Blue. This episode took on a life of its own. A philosophy podcast series titled Blue Means Enough analyzed it over 4 episodes, linking Zima's arc to Zen Buddhism, Camus absurdism, and the anti-work movement. A subreddit emerged, r/ZimaMind, filled with minimalist images captioned, return to tile, remove ego, or just clean. Even tech developers jokingly referenced it. GitHub commits titled Zima Refactor imply a project reverting to its original form after feature bloat. Clearly, these stories didn't end when the credits rolled. They became codebooks for a generation trying to make sense of collapse, purpose, and simplicity. Further viewing, Kindred Visions. If these episodes resonated with you, here are 4 underappreciated gems that build on similar ideas. The Silent Sea, 2021, South Korea. Why watch? Like Helping Hand, it turns space into a test of bureaucratic betrayal and survival against resource starvation. Key theme: when institutional lies kill faster than the vacuum. Aniera, 2018, Sweden. Why watch? A cruise ship-like arc drifts off course, the passengers slowly lose meaning. Mirrors Zima Blue's descent into abstraction. Key theme: what do we become when comfort replaces purpose? The Red Turtle, 2016, Ghibli/Wild Bunch. Why watch? A dialogue-free allegory about acceptance, time, and the illusion of control, tonally close to Fish Night. Key theme: surrender isn't always defeat. Sometimes it's transcendence. Archive, 2020, Gavin Rothery. Why watch? Explores love, memory, and robotic identity in a remote lab, aligns with Lucky 13's emotional AI crossover. Key theme: can artificial presence be more honest than human memory? Deep reading. Books to haunt you after the credits. Want to trace these themes further through literature? Here are 4 underread, thematically rich works. Stories of Your Life and Others, Ted Chiang. Why? The short The Tower of Babylon echoes Helping Hand's blend of cosmic awe and bodily cost. Lens, Science and Faith as Architecture, built brick by brick. Solaris, Stanislav Lem. Why? Hallucinatory contact with an unknowable ocean, think Fish Night, but with existential math. Lens, when the alien doesn't speak, but reflects. Exhalation, Ted Chiang. Why? a short about air, entropy, and memory. Matches Zima Blue's mechanical introspection. Lens, time isn't a line. It's pressure inside a closed system. Machinehood, SB Divya. Why robots demand rights and AI labor organizes, like Lucky 13's Soul in a Shell themes scaled up to revolution. Lens, automation is political. Consciousness doesn't need humanity to demand justice. Why these matter? The real question isn't whether love, death, and robots influence culture. The question is, what part of culture was already cracking, and these stories gave it language? A world drowning in choice, chasing old beauty while building new machines. A generation exhausted by scale, tempted by minimalism. Institutions failing, yet individuals still crawling home with one less limb. These stories are fragments of a collective psyche, smuggled through genre. The content isn't viral because it's shocking. It spreads because it's true, but prettier than the truth usually is. In the end, all I ever wanted was to clean the tile. Zima. It sounds absurd. A godlike artist shedding galaxies of meaning, only to return to a simple, repetitive act. But maybe the absurd part is that it makes perfect sense. Across Helping Hand, Fish Night, Lucky 13, and Zima Blue, we watch four characters confront systems too big to fix, too indifferent to love them back. They don't fight the system head-on. They don't overthrow the void. Instead, they adapt, submit, sacrifice, or redefine. And that's what makes these stories so quietly devastating. Because they reflect our current moment with terrifying elegance. Where survival requires mutilation. Where history appears only to consume the curious. Where machines offer loyalty no institution ever gave. And where purpose is rediscovered not in becoming more, but in becoming less. So we leave you with a few uncomfortable questions, because that's what the best sci-fi always does. What if Zima had chosen to evolve further instead of regressing? Would he have become a tyrant? A god? Or simply lost in abstraction? What if the ship Lucky 13 had failed to explode on cue? Would we still call it loyal? Or admit it was never alive? What if the fish in Fish Night weren't ghosts, but the future? And our memories are the ones already fading? And most hauntingly, if Alex had someone with her in space, would she still be alive, or would they both be dead? These aren't alternate endings. They're alternate frameworks. Ways to ask not what changed in the story, but what never changed in us. In the spirit of Zima, we won't ask you to like or subscribe. Instead, we ask you this. If you had to describe your reaction to these 4 episodes with just one emoji, what would it be? Drop it in the comments. Then tell me why. Because this isn't just a playlist of shorts. It's a collective dream diary. And we're still waking up.